Hello everyone, you're watching Let's Talk About Prepping. I'm Tyler, your host, and in this video, I'm going to talk about millennials and generations below. Now, bear with me as I'm taking a late night walk, so the video quality will not be too great, but hopefully we can have an interesting discussion. So this conversation is in response to Dad on YouTube. Link in the description. Good channel. He doesn't put things out too much, and he doesn't really want you to watch his channel. He likes to stay under the radar. But if you are a cognitive prepper, you're somebody who isn't interested in the surface level novelty type preps, you want to examine the thinking, the faulty thinking in some of how we prep, look at, logic-based, looking at what your own lying eyes tell you, kind of analysis of prepping. Well, he's a good channel to watch. And this video that he made that I'm responding to was in its own right sort of a response to someone else's. And the discussion topic is that we, meaning, 30-year-olds and below, I suppose, was this original person's context. We are the weakest generation. And this is something I want to break down. I myself am a millennial. I'm on the older end of the millennial range. I'm 32 years old, born in 1989. And I see myself as ill-equipped, even compared to some of my peers. I've got guys that I grew up with who are doing much better than I'm doing. Now, much like that on YouTube, I put myself well into the upper percentile. I know I'm not below average. There are ways in which I'm perfectly average. And I can say without feeling like I'm bragging that there are plenty of ways in which I'm well above average. And I feel blessed to say that, unironically. I'm an intelligent person. I'm fit and well equipped by my parents. And that's where I'll segue into my thoughts on generational decline. There's that cliche, which Dad on YouTube referred to, and it's pretty accurate in my opinion. Hard times make strong men make easy times, and easy times make soft men, and soft men make hard times. And I think that that's pretty damn accurate. I don't think it's unavoidable. I don't think that it's some kind of hard rule. But barring some force that keeps you on track, that keeps each generation strong and understanding why we do the things we do to keep things from falling apart, barring that kind of force, you're doomed. I see tradition as being that force. And often that comes in the form of religion. But there are reasons that we do the things that we do. And when you start messing with those things, as we have been, there are unforeseen consequences. And that is just outside, completely separate from the fact that each generation is going to have a hard time, even with those forces of tradition and such. They're going to have a hard time passing on their skills and their capability that they were endowed with by their parents to the next generation. We talk about in the prepping community plenty enough that the grandparents from the Depression era are all but gone. along with all their skills, knowledge, and experience. And while it's great that the world has progressed and become easier and we've got all these modern conveniences, there's a fair argument to be had that short of modern medicine and some other life-saving and suffering alleviating advancements that we've made, we've really done ourselves a disservice by getting so far from our natural norms. I know that my parents didn't pick up everything my grandparents had to teach them. And I know that even though I consider my parents to be among the best parents that a person could have, that's not just bias. I'm very lucky to have the parents that I have. But there's no way that they ever could have taught me everything that I might need to know for every possible situation. They never would have had the context. And even if they had, I wouldn't have picked it all up, definitely not well enough to pass it all on to the next generation properly. It's almost inevitable that we're going to have generational decline as fallible creatures. And barring, again, some force to keep us evolving, to keep us paying attention to what we're going to need in each new environment that we find each generation. And I think that we will always find ourselves facing some kind of tension point, at least. Now, where are we at now? Well, I've always said that people give millennials too hard of a time, and that's not just me trying to defend myself and my fellow millennials. I've always said that I think that past generations had just as many losers as millennials have. But they stayed in their parents' basement and didn't have the internet to be vocal with. So all you encountered were the people who worked, because that's where you encountered them. Well, nowadays, the people who work don't get on the internet, so you don't hear from them. And the people who live in their parents' basements, well, they're the most vocal because they sit in their parents' basements and communicate with you. You don't hear from most of us who spend all of their days working, especially those who have a family to go home to, and hardly watch YouTube, hardly or don't at all get on Twitter. It's interesting that in many populations, Twitter is less than 30% of the population, but the most vocal. My point being, I think that there are a lot of pretty impressive millennials that you never have heard of because they've been keeping to themselves. And I know there are. I know plenty of them, and we see plenty of them. Now, these next generations. Now, I actually agree with that on YouTube to some degree here. I think that there are probably a lot of exemplary Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever, the kids who are 18 years old and below right now, even the kids who are below 10 years old, people like that on YouTube are raising those kids. And I have to have hope that there are some really great guys like him out there raising some really great kids. And I do believe that you really only need a small percentage of the population to have their shit together in order for things to more or less get on all right. How's it going? So I think that humanity is not going to go extinct. But I hire and train some of these people, and we have a high enough hiring standard that the people that I end up hiring are already a cut above the resumes and the interviews that I get. And I won't get too far into how many people don't show up for the interviews, but suffice it to say that anxiety is crippling. And this isn't the kind of anxiety that millennials joke about. This is an incapability of performing to any degree. I have been the kind of person who had a hard time making phone calls when I was younger and getting their stuff taken care of. I've been a procrastinator. But mini rant incoming. Snowplow parenting has completely demolished the ability of many young people to interact with the world in any meaningful fashion. You can even see it in the cartoons. They do not equip children. And it's not the job of cartoons to equip children, but if you simply watch the situational contexts of their entertainment, of their learning, if you pay attention to the parenting styles going on, it is horrifying. And I think that probably some of you don't even realize it because you probably do a better job. But I'm sure some of you see it. I'm horrified by how my peers are raising their children and how they were raised. I'm often reminded of the Rat Utopia experiments where the mothers basically just abandoned their children when it came to rearing them. And I've had plenty of friends who were disadvantaged as children. Most of the people I've hung up with growing up did not have the benefit of the childhood that I did. Many of my friends were abandoned by their parents at a young age, either with their parents still there or actually abandoned. I've witnessed people who were basically not equipped at all to face the world, and they adapted. There's almost a tendency for a child to overcome disadvantages foisted on them by their parents. And so I do have hope for that. I have always felt that millennials and generations below have a very powerful advantage over people even just a few years older than us in having a different conception of the world. In a lot of ways, at my age, I do feel like a bridge between the world before the 90s as it was in the 80s, and at least having an appreciation for the way it was before that. And I won't say that there are fundamental flaws in the mentality of having grown up in that world and having to face this one, but I do think that children nowadays have a open-mindedness that may benefit them in the chaos that's coming, because sad as it is, the world of the 90s and before is never coming back. And so if you really look at the world the way that it's going, the fact that many of them have no conception of how it was may be a benefit to them. And I think this might be part of the reason why I've had a hard time making videos, because the world is not what it was. I think that the events of the past couple years, the baseline, the past decade, I think it's about time to give up on the world of the 90s if any of you were holding on to that, and really accept that it's time to focus on what can be salvaged of the next generations. Because our world, and I know that many of you are going to laugh at me at the age of 32 for feeling like this, but I do feel old. I do feel like one of the best things that I can do at this point is try to prepare what can be saved of the next generation for the world that we're leaving them. Because At the age of 32, in the world that we're living in, I may well be past my middle age. I hope that I have time to raise children of my own, and maybe they'll be well equipped. That would certainly be my goal. But lately, I've really been looking at people younger than myself and wondering what can be done to create some small percentage of the population that will be able to lead or carry enough of the rest that if things really do go tits up in the next few decades, we'll have some form of humanity that can carry on without going all the way back to the Stone Age. So I feel pretty bleak because I feel like there are a lot of forces that are converging to completely undermine my generation, and especially the ones coming up. But I do have hope that between people who are raising their kids to face it and the fact that we're made to adapt into that kind of thing, I think we're going to be okay. But it's looking pretty ugly. Anyways, thanks for joining in for that rant. Love to hear your thoughts, and, well, look towards the next generations, guys. Everybody stay safe out there.